The Animal Family, Chapter 3. The Hunter Brings Home a Baby. But after the hunter and the mermaid had lived together a long time, the hunter began to have a dream. He would say in the morning to the mermaid, with a troubled look, "I had my dream." "I'm sorry," she would answer. It was the same as ever, the hunter went on, looking out into the air as though the dream were still there for him to see. "My father was standing by the fire, and he was double, like a man and his shadow, and I was his shadow. And my mother sat there singing, and she was double too, like a woman and her shadow. And when I looked at it, you were her shadow. But when I looked over to see where I used to lie on the floor by the fire, there was nothing, not even a shadow. The place was empty. And the empty place got dark, and the fire went out, and I awoke." "It's a bad dream," the mermaid said, frowning. The hunter said, "I hope I never dream it again." Every few weeks, though, he would dream it. Finally, the mermaid said to him, "I know what your dream means. It means you want a boy to live with us. Then you'll be your father's shadow, and I'll be your mother's, and the boy will be yourself, the way you used to be. It will all be the way it used to be." The hunter thought for a moment. Then he nodded. He could see that what she said was so, but there was nothing he could do about it. They had no child themselves, and out in the wilderness there were no human beings from whom they could beg or borrow or steal a child. One day the man was hunting. The night came and he hadn't come home. It got later and later, darker and darker, and he still hadn't come. The mermaid would go outside and look up toward the forest and the mountains, but she could see nothing. It began to rain. The big drops beat on the roof and against the window, and the wind roared in the trees outside. But finally, the rain clouds blew out to sea, the stars came out, and the wet, black night was silent except for the sound of the waves. The mermaid lay in the window seat, half awake and half asleep. All at once there were footsteps. The door opened, and the hunter staggered in with something in his arms. He said to the mermaid, laughing, "I've a boy for us." "What's happened to you? What's happened to you?" the mermaid cried. There were 3 long cuts down the side of the hunter's face, and the blood had dripped from them onto his wet, naked shoulders. There were terrible bruises all along his back and chest, and he held in his arms something smothered inside his wet deerskin shirt, something that struggled to get free and snapped up at the man's face and made a queer, angry, miserable sound, half a whine and half a growl. The mermaid looked at its brown furry head and its big white teeth and shining eyes and saw that it was a bear cub. "If I hadn't had an arrow out, I'd have never come home to you," the hunter answered. "It was getting dark, and I was going through some bushes full of berries when I heard that sound a bear makes to her cubs. And before I could take 2 steps, that mother bear was on me. Well, I'd come between her and him. I shot her from so close, the arrow went half through her. She was so near me, I couldn't run. I couldn't dodge even. Her claws came here," as he pointed to his chest. And then he touched the side of his face. "And she hugged me. She hugged me so hard I thought my back would break. And then I drove my knife into her from behind. And I had my left arm in front of my face, and I could feel her teeth going through my arm and right through the leather. She shook me the way a grown-up shakes a child, and I thought, I'm done for. And then she went limp all over, and she fell down on top of me and never moved again. Well, for a while I couldn't move myself. I just laid there with her on top of me. Look where her teeth went into my arm," he said. He held out his left arm, and the right was still hugging the bear in his shirt. And halfway between the wrist and the elbow, she could see the regular bloody pattern of the bear's teeth. The hunter plopped the bundle of wet leather and bear cub down onto the bear skin of the bed. And while the mermaid washed the hunter's face and arms and shoulder and got the blood off, the cub struggled out of the shirt, crawled back into the farthest corner of the bed, and growled at them. "He was in a tree," the hunter said. "If he'd been a month older, I could have never got him down from there. Oh, he was hard to get home. He snapped and wriggled the whole way down the mountain. When the hunter was dressed and dry, they had their dinner. It felt like a holiday to them somehow, and they laughed as they ate. As he smelled the food, the cub came out of the center of the bearskin, and the hunter threw him a piece of meat. The little bear growled and backed away, but then he sidled up to the meat, hit it with his paw, and began to shake it. When he had gulped it down, the mermaid threw him another piece, and another, and another. Finally, she held some out for him in her hand, and he came to the edge of the bed and he reached for it. The hunter said with a peaceful smile, "In a couple of days, he'll be eating at our table with us." Well, that night they put the deer skins and the seal skins on the bed and let the cub sleep on the bear skin in the corner. Sometimes he would wake up and cry for a while, and then huddle in the corner again with his face pushed into the bearskin and go back to sleep. And in 2 days, he was sitting on the floor by the table when they ate. He was eating with them. In a week, it was as if he had lived with them always.